coming up.
I would urge the member opposite, in fact all members, to come and door knock in my riding. Come to Winkler, Altona, or Elm Creek or Carman and try to tell my constituents that this is not a tax, that they are in fact better off, and see what the response is. And I will happily come to any of your ridings and do the same, or we can collectively as a committee go across this country and door knock.
Mr. Leslie, through the chair, please.
I'd like to apologize for that interruption as well, especially when we have experts in the room on behavioral economics and behavioral change. You have mentioned water pricing as a way to control that. I was wondering if you could actually, given that the member opposite has brought up pricing pollution, the pollution pricing program we have in place, comment on how important you think it is to put in these pricing incentives to get Canadians to change behavior.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
I'll use my time actually to move a motion that was put on notice last Friday. I'm just referring to the motion that the committee report to the House its recommendation that the Liberal government abolish the consumer carbon levy, more commonly referred to as the carbon tax. You know, premiers and leaders of all political backgrounds have come out opposed to the Prime Minister's 23% carbon tax hike. And there is clearly momentum and a growing groundswell of support to scrap.
Yeah, just on the terminology, I don't think it is a tax according to the Supreme Court.
Well, this
when
is
the money is put back in the pocket of families. Yeah, it's important. So
yeah, but I mean, it's a, you know, people will
that
debate it till kingdom
when
come.
When you take a levy and it's paid back to people,
I understand.
it's not a tax.
I understand. Go ahead, Mr. Leslie.
I will be sure to correct when Liberal ministers screw up in the House of Commons and accidentally call it a carbon tax instead of a price on pollution. I will call them out on it. Absolutely. I think that is critical that we be honest. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I was saying, that there is clearly momentum and a groundswell of support to scrap the carbon tax once and for all. Now, my Liberal colleagues and their Environment Minister clearly don't care what their constituents are telling them. And I know that Mrs. Taylor-Roy and Mr. Longfield and Mr. Ali are clearly hearing from their constituents, and unlike the Parliamentary Secretary, which as is tradition must support his government, we have an opportunity to have the freedom of Liberal MPs come forward after 3 weeks of the 23% hike being in place in this country and angry Canadians from coast to coast to stand up to this Prime Minister. And I'd be remiss not to mention my colleague from Victoria, who said a few days ago the carbon tax is not the, quote, be-all, end-all.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Well, I somehow, go
he
ahead.
He just misquoted me, so I would like to correct the record.
You want to correct the record? What did you say?
I said that the Liberals have been treating the consumer carbon price like the be-all, end-all of climate policy, like a silver bullet, that it is one tool in our toolbox to fight the climate crisis.
Okay. So that's on the record. Go ahead, Mr. Leslie.
I was going to agree with you, actually, and because I think you're right, that there are many various ways to help reduce carbon emissions that don't involve taxing moms taking their kids to school or to hockey practice or to a tournament on the weekend or to a senior driving to the town next door to get groceries or to fill their prescription, or a farmer in Milton drying his corn at the end of harvest.
Because the reality is that this
Okay, another point of order. Yeah.
No, it's just he once again is referring to this as a tax, which is not what it is. He keeps telling a half-truth about what this is, and
I
just want to, like Madame Collins corrected the record, I'd like to correct the record that this is not a tax.
Okay,
it's a levy,
right.
and that it's all returned to the consumer.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would urge the member opposite, in fact all members, to come and door knock in my riding. Come to Winkler, Altona, or Elm Creek or Carman and try to tell my constituents that this is not a tax, that they are in fact better off, and see what the response is. And I will happily come to any of your ridings and do the same, or we can collectively as a committee go across this country and door knock.
Mr. Leslie, through the chair, please.
But my hope is that we don't just adjourn debate, that we don't just disregard the views of the First Nation chiefs across Ontario, the Liberal Premier from Newfoundland and Labrador, and frankly, my constituents, because that's my job, is to come here and defend them, and they are adamantly opposed to the carbon tax. Simply put, it's time we axe the tax for everyone, on everything, and for good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Van Koerden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, apologies to the witnesses. This happens all the time in these meetings now. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, I hope I haven't taken too long. I'm going to adjourn debate for now on this motion so that we can continue with our witnesses
Okay, we have
in a
to go to a
respectful
vote.
manner.
On va passer au vote.
Madame Chatel? Mr. Longfield? Yes. Ms. Taylor-Roy?
Yes, definitely.
Mr. Vancouverton?
Yes.
Mr. Cram?
Opposed.
Mr. Leslie?
Opposed.
Mr. Mazur?
No.
Mr. Malillo?
Against.
Madame Posey?
Oui.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go to Ms. Taylor-Roy. For 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the witnesses. And once again, I'd like to apologize for that interruption as well, especially when we have experts in the room on behavioral economics and behavioral change. And Mr. Brower, I'd actually like to direct my questions to you because this is our final meeting with witnesses, experts on this subject. And throughout, we've had these interruptions. And we've heard from Professor Lazar that climate change is exacerbating the problems of drought, of floods, of so much to do with water management. And you have mentioned water pricing as a way to control that. I was wondering if you could actually, given that the member opposite has brought up pricing pollution, the pollution pricing program we have in place, comment on how important you think it is to put in these pricing incentives to get Canadians to change behavior and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And do you think it's a policy that works, putting a price on pollution?
I think there are sectors in the economy that speak the language of money. And so I strongly believe in awareness raising. When I was a kid, I was taught to brush my teeth and not use the water, the tap water running. I also gave that message to my children, and I think it's very effective it's an effective way of communicating that water is valuable and that you shouldn't spill it. At the same time, I also believe that we currently don't pay anything for the water that we're using. We're paying for the treatment of the water, and that's globally an issue, but also here in Canada. And so there is technology readily available that we can use, but that we're not using because there is no financial incentive to use it. Where I come from, my house already had a grey water tank to flush my toilets. It's crystal clear water. We don't need drinking water quality. That is very valuable. It's very costly to flush our toilets, for example. We're not using that kind of technology because there is no incentive. It's too cheap to...
I just have a minute, so I just wanted to ask, does this same behavioral economics, behavioral change apply to pollution pricing? So that when consumers are faced with a price on pollution, they're going to change their behavior as well as when there's a price on water and they change their behavior around water.
Yeah, so you generally speaking, you would. I cannot speak to carbon. I can speak a little bit to organic farming. And you see that there is still a huge discrepancy between the amount of organic food that we're buying and the conventional food. We're not internalizing the externalities associated with conventional farming in our food products, and so the food is offered very cheap, and there is no chance for organic farming. Already for 20, 30 years, the market share, at least in Europe, I don't know in Canada.
Yeah, thank you. So you're saying that these pricing signals do work to change consumer behavior, and that we need to internalize the externalities, like with organic foods.
And we need to have patience because it takes time. Because it's highly dependent on the baseline price that we pay. There's a reason why farmers don't respond right away if you introduce a price on the water, because they hardly pay for it. So if they pay a very high price already, and then you start increasing the price, they will feel it more and more. And so they will start reducing their water use or invest in more efficient drip irrigation.
So 23% increase in the price on pollution makes sense in that context.
We'll go to Madam.
One of the things that you mentioned struck me, and that in Ontario, the bottling industry pays like just around $500 for every 1,000 cubic meters of groundwater that they extract. That seems appalling. Can you speak a little bit about how we can hold these kind of industries more accountable, and what is required to make sure that they aren't extracting water to the detriment of communities?
Yeah, so I think foremost what is needed is that we value the resource itself, because what they're paying for is an administrative fee that is not related in any way to the water that they're extracting. So it used to be $3.72 or something like that per 1,000 cubic meters, so like almost 1 million liters. They just added $500 to that after they had like a 2 or 3 year moratorium here in Ontario, I believe, to not issue any further permits to the bottling industry. It is completely unclear to me from the outside where that $500 comes from. It's still very low. I pay 5 times more for a liter of water in Kitchener-Waterloo, where 80% of my drinking water is groundwater.